So hello YouTube. So I'm not sure what to talk about today, but perhaps I'll just talk about the football today. So it's Sunday, and yesterday was the AFL Grand Final, and we had Richmond beat GWS, or Great Western Sydney. And it was an interesting thing because Richmond finished third, and GWS finished sixth, and we sort of think, well, shouldn't a grand final be first versus second? And it normally should be, but the whole point of the final series is the idea that perhaps those rankings are wrong. Perhaps a team that lost a game or by a couple of points was a bit unlucky was still the strongest team. We want to have the best team win the premiership, and they call it the minor premiership when you finish first. So this year the minor premiership was won by Geelong. They finished first, just ahead of Brisbane, and there was percentage separating them. Third was Richmond, fourth was Collingwood, fifth was West Coast Eagles, my team, sixth was Greater Western Sydney, and I'm trying to think who, seventh was, I believe eighth was Essendon, seventh was Western Bulldogs, so eighth was Essendon, and just missing the finals was Hawthorn in ninth, and then we had a bunch of other teams below that. So when we had the final series, we first of all, one plays 4, 2 plays 3, 5 plays 8 and 6 plays 7. Now 5 and 6 both beat their lower team quite easily. GWS easily beat, actually I suppose it wasn't that easy, but they beat Western Bulldogs, and West Coast Eagles flogged Essendon, and Essendon really probably wasn't really good enough to be in the finals this year. They got there, good on them, but they probably weren't as strong as the teams below them. And and then we had 1 and 2 both lost. So number 3 Richmond beat number 2 Brisbane. Bit of an upset. Perhaps not a huge upset, but a bit of an upset. And Collingwood, number 4, beat number 1 Geelong. So suddenly we're having 4 and 3 be 1 and 2 as far as the whole rest of it goes. And then we get to so it's the qualifying finals, and then we get to the semi-finals, they call it. So that's when still an elimination, and we had Geelong go up against West Coast, and look, it was pretty close, and perhaps West Coast could have won, but in the end Geelong came over the top of them, even after West Coast was quite a distance ahead after 3 quarters. And I was a bit upset about that, but you know, as it goes. And then in the other one, GWS had a similar situation against Brisbane, but managed to hold on. And I was like, oh, it could have so easily been West Coast as well. So then we got to the preliminary finals, and you had Collingwood up against GWS, and you had Richmond up against Geelong. And so Richmond against Geelong was actually 1 versus 3, or 3 versus 1, and Richmond ended up quite a distance ahead in the end, but Geelong, and that could have easily been Richmond versus West Coast, but for a bit of bad luck. But anyway, we had GWS versus Collingwood, and GWS got a long way ahead, and then Collingwood came back, and they only just held on at the end. And so we had 2 teams, and you probably have thought, well, Richmond, third, had an easier run in the finals, because your top 4 you get a bit of a bonus. They had that difficult first match, had to travel to Brisbane, but after that was pretty easy. And you had GWS, who fought really hard to get there. And we also had the finals experience. Richmond had won a premiership 2 years earlier, and GWS had never made a grand final before. So there were, most people, like if you looked at the tipping, most people were saying it was either going to be a big Richmond win or a small GWS win. Very few people were picking a small Richmond win. It was either big win or small win to the other team. And I think I went for GWS by 6 points. And when you saw how it started, that first quarter, and there was no goals getting scored, and then GWS got the first goal, and you had about 2 minutes to go, and GWS were a goal up. 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. And you go, well, if this finishes a goal up, GWS has a chance. And then, just about a minute to go, Richmond got their goal, and they went a point up. And I thought, that's ruined all that momentum, all that effort. And Richmond had dominated early, but they just couldn't get the goal on the board. So I went, can probably cope with 1 point down. And then Richmond got another one with like about a second to go. And it was like, that broke them. And look, you're thinking it's the first quarter. Why is that breaking them? But to be 7 points down after all that effort and getting ahead and staying ahead and all that, this is so annoying. And then the second quarter came and you knew that GWS had to get the next goal. And when they didn't, it was like, And there was a bit of fight, but really by half time, you felt like the game was over. And you felt like I think it was 35 points. And you're thinking, you'd have to have everything go right to get back from there. And for a side that hasn't made the final before, was finished sixth, and had a few, the last 3 or 4 years had all been so close to getting to the finals. Well, they were in the finals, but getting to the grand final, they were close to it. In the preliminary finals, getting the semis, having a bit of bad luck. And it just sort of felt like, it's all over. And it was. I mean, by 3/4 time, the margin was, I think it was about 50 points. And then the final quarter, it didn't even matter. Nobody cared. And I think Richmond won by 89 points or something ridiculous like that. And it didn't matter. I mean, the match was pretty much over. And if you look at the crucial moment, it was that moment where, GWS got the first goal. And it was like an arm wrestle. And then Richmond just went and got 2 goals. And that was the crucial minute. And then the next goal after that in the second quarter. And that was where the match was won. The rest of the match didn't matter. And you're thinking, how can a grand final that you've worked for the whole year be decided just by that? And I kind of thought, well, it's a bit unfair. And I mean, you've seen some of the classic grand finals. Like there was a couple decided by 1 point between West Coast Eagles and Sydney. And you had the ones where there was a tie between Collingwood and St Kilda. Granted, Collingwood were a much better team, but it still managed to be a tie. And had the replay. And then you look at this one and you're like, it's a bit of a fizzer. I mean, it was a bit of a fizzer season, if you've got to be honest. I mean, were Geelong the best team? They finished top, but they weren't really. Brisbane, they finished second. Were they the best team? Well, not really. Were Richmond the best team in third? Well, for most of the season they weren't. They weren't even in the top 8 for half the season. And then they came good towards the end, and they had a good run. I mean, Hawthorn had a good run, but they were coming from too far back. And if you look at Collingwood, were they that good? They were okay. They managed to sneak into 4th. And it could have easily been West Coast in 4th or even 3rd. But, there was a bit of a logjam, and we had a few teams that pretty much were just making up the numbers. And, GWS were there. They should have probably finished 3rd or 4th, but they almost seemed to be saving themselves for the finals, which was a good idea because that's why they managed to get to the grand final. But it also meant that they were finishing 6th. And it's a funny thing because when we look at how we do football nowadays, we're not doing it to be fair. We're doing it more to be, to make money. So we have Thursday night matches. So we had them all year. It's really annoying because you couldn't really watch them. I mean, and then you had them on Sundays, you'd have them on Mondays. And it was all over the place. It was just so they could get the maximum viewers, maximum attendance, maximum profits. And they rigged the game so that they'd be the popular teams playing, and derbies had happened twice. And I mean, I've been doing derbies for a few years now, but it's not about playing each other twice and having a fair competition. It's about making money. And it's become more like that. And sure, we have the draft picks to help to make it fairer, and that's good. But I mean, they didn't always have that. It used to just be, well, bad luck if there's nobody in your area that's any good, or you've got too small an area, or too poor an area, or the wrong kind of football people in your area. At least now we have draft picks. But sort of left me feeling, well, I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I mean, did Richmond deserve to win? Well, they were definitely the better of the two teams on the day, but there was a lot going on, and it's hard to sort of process. But I mean, I'm not upset that Richmond's won, because I think that they probably should have won last year, and they were so dominant last year, and so it kind of makes up for that. I guess I can't really clearly see another team that deserved it this year, except for perhaps GWS. And when they finished sixth, you can't say they deserve it. It's just a funny old thing. I sort of feel a bit, not sure how I feel about it. Anyway, so that's my post for today. Bye bye.